Caitlin Clark couldn't play. The league's biggest draw sat on the Indiana Fever bench in street clothes, hurt. And when the referees waved off a buzzer beater right in front of her, she was the one on her feet, telling them they'd gotten it wrong. The replay proved her right. Then Jason Whitlock, one of the most famous voices in sports media, watched that clip and decided she was the problem. Before you decide whether he had a point, you should know what else landed in the same 7 days. A former NBA team doctor looked at the way Caitlin Clark gets treated on a basketball floor and reached for the words life or death. A Hall of Fame coach admitted on the record that players in this league would love to hurt her. And in a couple of days, the Fever walked back into Phoenix, straight at the team that put her in those street clothes in the first place. Now hold that against the numbers. 21.2 points, 4 rebounds, and 8.2 assists a game. Now that's Caitlin Clark's season, and it puts her among the league leaders in both scoring and assists. That's who was sitting on that bench in Las Vegas. Not a heckler, not a sideshow. The Fever's franchise player watching her team fight without her because her back wouldn't let her join them. Whitlock put his real position in one sentence, right there in the caption of his own post. One sentence that tells you where some of the loudest men in sports media have decided to stand. Read it twice. Monday, July 6th. Jason Whitlock posts a clip from his Blaze Media show, Fearless, to X. On the screen, the segment title, Caitlin Clark and the WNBA's officiating obsession. And underneath it, his caption, word for word. Caitlin Clark was out again on Sunday, but she couldn't help herself from showing up the officials, even in street clothes. She couldn't help herself. Inside the segment, Whitlock lays out his case. A person in street clothes, he argues, has no business arguing with referees. Behavior like that frustrates coaches. To him, it all adds up to an obsession, Clark's obsession with officiating. He even notes that with Clark sitting out, attention had finally drifted away from the referees, except for that one moment. Sit with that framing for a second. A player gets hurt. She watches her team from the bench. A call goes against them, she believes it's wrong, and she says so. And the takeaway, from a man with a national platform, skips the call entirely, skips the reason she's hurt, and lands on her manners. The problem for Whitlock is that the moment he mocked has an ending, and his framing doesn't survive it. Go back to the moment itself. Sunday, July 5th in Las Vegas, final seconds of the second quarter, Fever trailing 40-41. Lexie Hull rises for a tough baseline fadeaway as the buzzer sounds, and buries it. The officials wave it off. Down on the Fever bench, Caitlin Clark, street clothes, bad back, sitting out her third straight game, comes up out of her seat. Cameras catch her telling the nearest official exactly what she thinks. That wasn't even close. Then the officials go to the replay. They watch it again, and they put the basket back on the board. Indiana leads 42-41 at the half. Stop on that for a second because it changes everything you just heard. The league's own replay review agreed with the woman in street clothes. The protest Jason Whitlock turned into a segment about her obsession. The review said she was right. Right about the call, confirmed by the league's own machinery in front of the whole arena. Indiana finished the night with an 84-68 win, the first regular season victory in Las Vegas in franchise history, after 11 straight losing trips there, on a night when both teams were missing their biggest star, and the Fever climbed to 12-8. One of the gutsiest wins of their season. And the takeaway from one of the most recognizable names in sports media? The injured woman on the bench talks too much. What makes that framing so hard to sit with is the timing. 4 days before his segment, a doctor had already explained, in chilling detail, why her voice matters a lot more than her manners. Dr. DiNubile spent years as an orthopedic consultant for the Philadelphia 76ers. On July 2nd, 4 days before Whitlock posted his segment, he went on the record about the contact Caitlin Clark keeps absorbing. His words exactly, "You can crush someone's larynx with very little pressure. 10 to 20 pounds of pressure can damage the throat or larynx area. Even if you don't fracture the larynx, a blow to that area. You could get some swelling or bleeding and close the airway and get into a very rapid life or death situation." 10 to 20 pounds. That's the margin he's describing. A former NBA team doctor talking about a basketball player in 2026 reaching for the words life or death. He kept going. The contact she absorbs is, in his words, concerning to me. It's troubling to me. He listed it out plainly. She gets a lot to her face. She gets poked in the eye, she gets hit in the face. And defenders crowding the spot where she lands on her three-point shots? Very, very dangerous. Scroll the comment sections under these stories, and you'll find fans who go further than the doctor ever did. Fans warning about her landing zone, fans convinced somebody wants her out for good, fans insisting a career-ending injury is the plan. DiNubile never claimed intent, and nothing on the record supports it. Risk is what he described. The plain medical arithmetic of what happens when this much contact keeps finding one player. You don't need a conspiracy for that to be frightening. The physics are frightening all on their own. So a doctor says life or death, and a talk show host says decorum. And between those two voices, a Hall of Fame coach said the quiet part out loud. The same week, Geno Auriemma, a Hall of Fame coach whose word carries as much weight as anyone's in women's basketball, went on a sports media podcast and said this: "I do think there are some personal animosities in that league where people are going to take a shot at her unfairly. No question about that." And then he went further. There are players in that league that would love to kick her ass every minute of every day. To be fair, Auriemma spent most of that conversation waving the alarm off. He said the fouls aren't a referendum on America, called parts of the fan outrage delusional, framed the panic as overblown, which is exactly what gives his words their weight. Even the man rolling his eyes at the outrage admits, no question about it, his phrase, that players want their shot at her, and that some of them will take it unfairly. When the skeptic and the doctor disagree on the tone but agree on the danger is real. To understand why any of this is being said at all, why a doctor is talking about airways and a Hall of Famer is talking about animosities, go back to the night that put Caitlin Clark in street clothes. June 24th, Gainbridge Fieldhouse, Indianapolis. Fever and Mercury, a game Indiana would lose 111-109. With 6:52 left in the second quarter, in a scramble for position, Alyssa Thomas drove her fist into Clark's throat. No foul was called in the game. Play simply continued. Afterward, the league reviewed the tape and handed down a flagrant 2 and a 1-game suspension for, in the league's own words, recklessly making contact with her fist to the throat area. Remember DiNubile's margin? 10 to 20 pounds of pressure near the throat can turn life or death. A fist landed there in a professional basketball game, and the whistle stayed silent. The punishment only arrived after the fact, from an office reviewing tape, not from an official on the floor when it happened. Later that same night, Clark rose for a three-point shot and got undercut by Valerian Ayayi, the landing that aggravated her back. That's the injury, that's the street clothes, and that's the bench in Las Vegas. Her own coach, Stephanie White, put it plainly after the game. "We have a generational talent and WNBA superstar who had 2 cheap shots right there that weren't called. Absolutely unacceptable." So when Caitlin Clark comes up off the bench 11 days later because she sees the officials miss another call, her team down 1 in a game her body wouldn't let her enter, that's not an obsession. That's a player who has personally paid the price for what the whistle misses. And this time, the replay backed her. Which raises the question this whole week has been circling. Who is Jason Whitlock? And why does he keep doing this? Jason Whitlock carries one of the loudest microphones in American sports. Today, he hosts Fearless on Blaze Media. Before that came decades on the biggest platforms in the business, ESPN, Fox Sports. When he posts about Caitlin Clark, millions watch. That reach is exactly why the pattern matters, because the street clothes segment wasn't his first swing at her. On June 5th, a month before all of this, Whitlock claimed the Indiana Fever were planning to ship Caitlin Clark to the Los Angeles Sparks. That post pulled in more than 2.1 million views, and behind it stood nothing. No reporter, no team source, no league source. People connected to the team flatly denied it. A month later, Clark is still in Indiana, and the trade lives only in that post. And the complaint about her arguing with officials? By his own telling, that grievance goes back years. He says it's driven him crazy since her college days, and he claims it drives her own father crazy too. His claim, his framing, nobody else's. But notice what it reveals. He's watched her that closely, for that long, and the thing he keeps landing on isn't the fist to her throat, or the doctor's warning, or the coach's admission, her tone. That's his target. There's an old reflex in sports media, older than this league. When an athlete gets hurt and the system around her misses it, the cheapest segment in the world is the one that blames the athlete. It costs nothing to make, it sources itself, and it always finds an audience, right up until the bill arrives. We've watched this movie before, in another league. For years, retired NFL players kept saying football was destroying them, and the league, backed by some of the loudest voices in sports media, dismissed the alarm as exaggerated. More than 4,500 former players eventually sued, accusing the NFL of concealing what head injuries were doing to them and rushing hurt men back onto the field. Then, in August of 2013, days before the season opened, the NFL agreed to a $765 million settlement. Compensation, medical exams, research, no admission of guilt, ever. It simply took $765 million to make the question go away. The WNBA is getting its warning for free, this week, from a doctor. The question is, who's listening? The calendar doesn't care about segments and captions. Later this week, the Indiana Fever walk into Phoenix, the first time these two teams share a floor since the night of the fist and the no call. Maybe Caitlin Clark is in uniform for it. Maybe she's watching in street clothes again. She's fought to get back on the floor this week, and either way, the same question follows her into that arena. Fans keep leaving some version of the same three words under these clips. The refs allow it. That's their testimony, not mine. But look at what this 1 week handed them. A doctor saying the risk can turn life or death. A Hall of Fame coach saying players want their shot at her. A replay review that took the injured woman's side. And standing against all of that, one of the most famous men in sports media, pointing his finger at the woman on the bench. So answer me this. When the replay says she's right, the doctor says it's dangerous, and the coach says they'd love to hurt her, what exactly does Jason Whitlock know that they don't? Put your answer in the comments, because the men with the biggest microphones aren't asking the question. And somebody finally has to.